a manager, you're a diplomat. You're a therapist. I mean, sometimes you have to be a referee in a fancy suit, and sometimes you have to be a mediator and facilitating between the board and the residents. And I always say, I'm Switzerland. When I was managing properties, and I used to tell my managers when I was a regional director, just remain neutral because you never know who your next board member is going to be.
That is great. That is great advice. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Human After All. Today, I am delighted to have Marcy Kravit with us. Marcy is a seasoned leader in community association management with over 2 decades of experience driving innovation, education, and human-centered leadership. Marcy's work sits at the intersection of people, infrastructure, and technology, and that is why I'm so delighted to welcome her to the podcast today. Marcy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Juliette. It's great to be here.
So, Marcy, you tackle one of the biggest questions of our time. How do we use tech to improve everyday life, especially for the older generations and underserved communities?
I was hired as an adjunct professor at Palm Beach State College to help recruit new CAMs. And what a CAM is a community association manager. And in the state of Florida, licensing is required. And basically, to become a CAM, you sit through a class for 2 days, take an exam, and you're a CAM. And I teach that class.
Fantastic. And CAM stands for Community Management.
Community Association Manager, correct.
Fantastic. And you've also written a whole book. Could you tell us a little bit about the book that you've written?
I've written a book called Common Sense Community Management. And over the last 2 decades, I've been writing a column, CAM to CAM, for the Florida Community Association Journal. And I found that managers were getting burnt out, and it's amazing how things can spiral into chaos. So I ended up journaling, and I tried to document my experiences so those managers didn't have to go through what I went through. I wanted to share the knowledge. And rather than just look at things where, they throw their hands up in the air, I just wanted to be able to give them a plan and give them the wisdom that I earned from being in that position. And basically, it's a manual that really puts empathy first.
Fantastic. Doing all that, I know that you've also been recognized with awards, including Mentor of the Year and Woman of the Industry. So I'm really delighted to have you on the show, Marcy. Thank you very much for agreeing to come on. Let's start with, you've spent over 20 years in community leadership. What first drew you to the field?
Well, it's interesting. No one says they want to grow up to be a community association manager. You just kind of fall into it. And that's what happened to me. I mean, I was in retail, and my family owned retail businesses. And my husband and I wanted to start fresh in a new community. We wanted to be somewhere where we could raise our children and feel it was safe. And where we were currently living, they were rezoning the schools, and there was just a lot of uncertainty. So my husband and I decided to move to this brand new community out in the Everglades called Weston, and we decided that it was really the best move for us because we wanted to be part of something from the ground up. And when it came to volunteering and being a part of that, as the developer was turning over the associations, they needed a board of directors. And I became extremely involved, and I was very excited because I could contribute some of my retail experience in dealing with the customer itself and serving the communities, and also my passion for education to help develop each and every community as they were being turned over. And so I started educating and bringing in experts like CPAs and attorneys to talk about what it is to be a board member and what you needed to know to serve on those boards, to provide those services to your neighbors.
And looking back, was there a defining moment when you realized that you really wanted to combine community work with technology and education?
It was absolutely, it was a baptism by fire. I mean, I was on the board when the developer was turning these communities over to the homeowners, and we really inherited a massive operation. I mean, we had no idea what we were getting ourselves into. And we wanted to make sure that we had the proper systems in place and that we were able to educate ourselves. So that's when I became a member of this organization, great organization that is now global, called the Community Associations Institute. And the manager that I was working with for my community, he said, you need to get your license. This is something you could make a career of. And I thought about, wow, running a community where I'm giving back and residents were part of it. And I just thought that that was so gratifying. And so when I did start to manage properties, I took a liking more to high rises, because my whole chapter of new beginnings was when my parents decided to follow my grandparents, who retired from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and their retail stores, and everyone was migrating to Florida, and all the retirees, and every summer we would come down and we'd visit them, and I was just fascinated. Pull up to this beautiful high rise, you have valet, it's like living in a hotel. And I was just really interested in learning more about it. So I decided that I was going to focus on the high rise sector and then stay on the board and focus on the HOA, single family home sector. And I was provided this property that was an older high rise that had old, outdated systems, things that were just, basically back then, just to get on the internet, I had to unplug the fax machine and I had to plug in the AOL dial-up. That was basically how I was able to get on the internet. They didn't have any type of access systems as far as getting to and from, in and out. I suggested that they enter into a fob. They had no idea what a fob was. They looked at me like I was an alien. And when it came to like modern technology and software, everything they were doing was paper. Their ledgers everything was done by paper. Had to earn their confidence and shift their mindset to see that this is going to help improve efficiency. And in the long run, it's going to reduce the amount of time that we're spending on things. And it's a big investment up front, but in the long run, to have those tools to help you operate and transform really does build trust within your residents as well.
And in terms of community management, I can imagine that you deal with conflict every day. What's been some of the hardest conflicts you've had to resolve, and how did it change you? How did you manage those conflict situations when introducing new technology and processes into community management?
I've seen some real community drama, and as I travel nationwide, I'm speaking about drama and conflict resolution. We could rival a reality television show over it. And, I was just so involved with making things better and wanting to improve things. And let's just say that beyond the paint swatches and granite samples, I had a huge upset at a meeting where the board of directors was split and there were two factions in the community for a lobby renovation. And that meeting just blew up. Chairs were flying, fists were getting into everyone's faces, and I had to physically call the police and I had to mediate this whole dispute. And it really wasn't about the budget and how much it was going to cost. It was about dignity. And everyone just wanted to feel heard. And to go to a place where we had to come to terms with compromise and empathy and trying to facilitate healing and getting people to understand what's going to be best for the community as a whole. What we did was we implemented a communication system where we were able to, at that time, we just started with email blasts and newsletters, and we were able to implement a dashboard and a software system where the residents could speak their mind and they knew that they were being heard.
It does sound like a lot of drama there. Definitely, it would be interesting to be a fly on the wall. So many people see community management as rules and meetings and process. What don't they see? What is the kind of human side that you live every day managing these communities?
I mean, basically, people just don't see the emotional weight. Like, I talk about empathy a lot and the care. And they don't realize that there could be a sweet woman that's lived there since the inception, who's like entering her 90th birthday, and she's a widower and she's had tough times. There's people that come to Florida for a maintenance-free lifestyle, and especially with what's going on now, where the showers have to be brought up to speed since the Champlain Tower situation. And a lot of these people are going through some major issues because they're on fixed incomes. And so when it comes to community management, it's not just about the maintenance fees and the grounds upkeep. It's really emotional labor that we're having to put in, and we're going to have to look at the emotional aspect and being a steward of the people and understanding that this is their home. This is their not just their asset, but there's an emotional attachment to everything that we do. So being a leader, it's not just your job to lead with your head, but you have to lead with your heart.
And in terms of the types of stressors that people feel when, there's a period of conflict or there's a period of change, how does that hit you?
I mean, when it comes to having tension and the challenges of conflict, I think what's happening is everyone just wants to be heard, and we have to listen. And a lot of people run for the boards for the right reasons, and there are a lot of people that run for the wrong reasons. And a lot of times it's just all about power and ego, and they just want to shove that item that they've been wanting. They have a self-agenda down everyone's throats. But we really have to look at the bigger picture, and we have to put together a strategic plan and understand what's best for the community. I always like to start with a wish list. Let's prioritize. Let's do a survey. Let's communicate. Let's have a town hall. Let everyone feel that they're being heard, and that the board isn't just taking control and doing what's on their self-agendas.
And in terms of being heard, is it enough to be heard whilst not adapting to specifically what that individual wants? So you seem to be putting a lot of emphasis on the idea that people want a voice, they want to feel that they're heard, even though the direction might not be congruent with beliefs or assertions or decisions.
As a manager, you're a diplomat. You're a therapist. I mean, sometimes you have to be a referee in a fancy suit, and sometimes you have to be a mediator and facilitating between the board and the residents. And I always say, I'm Switzerland. When I was managing properties, and I used to tell my managers when I was a regional director, just remain neutral, because you never know who your next board member is going to be.
That is great. That is great advice. So you wrote Common Sense Community Management. What was the personal moment that kind of pushed you to put the lessons that you learned into a book?
Well, over the years, as I was writing for the Florida Community Association Journal, attending trade shows and expos and attending classes to renew my license, I realized that there was so much knowledge that I had gained that I could give back. So my monthly column focused on whatever the hot trends were, or I focus a lot on communication, because I feel there is a breakdown in communication, and training is so important, and things are constantly evolving. So we have to stay ahead of the curve, and we have to be able to come together and say, okay, we know there's going to be change. We know that the demographics are changing. We're seeing younger people and what their wants and needs are. And when it comes to technology, we have to educate the seniors on what the wants and needs are and what's going to improve the property values, because you could have a property next door that doesn't have the latest and greatest technology or fiber optics fueling their property, and then you have another property that does, you're going to see anywhere from 5 to 7% increase in the property value. And you're going to see that it's going to be much more attractive, much more desirable. So I talk about these things in my article every month. And as I was developing all these articles, my managers were asking me, do you have an article on committees? How do I form a committee? Do I need a committee? What does the committee need to do? What's the role and responsibility of me, the manager, the boards? And then when I have to bid out a service, say I'm going into a concrete restoration project, which is going to be millions of dollars, how do I go about doing that? Or what we have now is 40-year recertifications. The buildings hit 40 years. How do I go through that process? So I was writing about these things as I was experiencing them. And that's where I decided to put it all in one book. And this way it's a reference book, and and what I'm hearing, it's over 3.5 years since I published the book. And people are saying that it's been a great staple, and they leave it on their desk so they can refer to it whenever they need the answers to certain questions.
That's fantastic. Well done indeed. I'm interested to talk specifically about technology. So you've worked on putting in technology infrastructure into these communities, especially for older people. What is the most surprising way that you've seen technology improve someone's life?
So it's interesting because when I was an on-site manager, like I experienced where most of the residents were afraid of it, now that I am a business partner working for Hotwire Communications and I'm traveling all over the country, it's a different mindset depending on where you are in the country. But here in Florida, there was definitely a surge in those that had a better understanding for the need for technology. And like I said, improving your property values. It was all about education. And a lot of the old coaxial cable infrastructure, especially here in Florida, is weathered. So it wasn't a reliable connection. Going to fiber seemed to be the answer. Being that Hotwire Communications has been in business for over 22 years, and they were the first to bring fiber and the first to bring a gig, it was mind-boggling to some. But once they were able to understand how we do it, and because we do it specifically for HOAs and condos, we understand where they're coming from, and change can be tough. We were able to walk them through the process from start to finish because they need to do what they do best, and that is manage the property for the manager and the board to lead the residents. We have entire departments that help and facilitate this process, and it makes it so much easier. And then they have, this community channel that is a bulletin board for them to be able to communicate and tailor it for their community. For instance, in South Florida, we have hurricanes. So when a hurricane is coming, they can actually let the resident know that the hurricane is coming. Everyone's glued to the television anyway. They're watching the Weather Channel. And they can see a ticker tape going across their screen. And in order to get through to the next channel, they have to acknowledge it on the remote control. And when it comes to education, one thing I have to say, and I'm extremely grateful to be part of Hotwire. I'm entering almost my 5th year in January 2026. We decided during COVID to put together an entire department for education. So a resident can either set up a call virtually, in person, or on the phone, and they can learn whatever they need to know about how to use our systems. And it's a beautiful thing because most people, like I said, they're afraid of it.
I can imagine, yeah. And what excites you about the future of community management?
What really excites me is AI. And that's another thing. A lot of people are so afraid of it, but I think that it's going to transform how we do things on a daily basis. And again, talking about improving efficiency, I was at a conference just recently, and I was just learning and seeing what's developing. And everyone needs to really look at what the bigger picture is. I mean, if you're going to have a big event, say in your ballroom of your community, I mean, your chief engineer remotely with the smart systems can just adjust the temperature. Doesn't even have to go to the property, knowing that at 5 o'clock we're going to have this huge gala, and the chief engineer doesn't have to be there early. He can, on a Saturday, he can just buy, an app. He can just adjust the temperature. I mean, he can turn the lights on. It's incredible. I mean, it was interesting when Alexa first came out. That was fascinating to us.
Yeah, no, definitely. And if you could redesign how technology and human-centered leadership work together in communities, what would it look like?
Well, I would say that we need to be able to, I think there's going to be the death of the mass email. I mean, I think a lot of people, they're just so overloaded with emails. So there's going to be other ways for us to communicate, and I call it the hyper-personalized engagement. And I mean, right now we're sending text alerts via SMS, not email, through apps. You're going to subscribe to an app and you'll be able to get an alert. So you know that that's something important and it doesn't get buried into the mass email universe.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So in terms of the proudest moment of your career, I know that you've had a long and distinguished career in community management, but I'd love to find out what the proudest moment of your career is, and one that still makes you a little bit emotional when you think about it.
I would say it was receiving the 2014 National Manager of the Year Award. I had no idea that I would be receiving this. I just did what I thought was best to turn a community around. And I just was so happy and so touched that I was given this award. And all I did was just do what I love to do. And it was truly honorable. I mean, I was just to witness being amongst some of the greatest professionals in our industry and be up on that stage and think, wow, they've got superpowers. I'm just somebody that just leads every day with grace and grit, and I try to sparkle and get my residents to do. I'm getting all choked up here, Juliette.
That's really sweet. I think you're being very humble.
I couldn't take all the credit, but thank you, because the property that I was at, it really needed some TLC. And it was difficult to get the buy-in because, the attitude is like, oh, we've always done it this way. And how do you build that trust and get the buy-in from the board of directors and your staff? And I'd say that it was a tough sell because they had been led by the old way. And here I come in with the innovative new way. So my approach was, we're all in this together. It's a team. And being given that award was just, I'm so grateful. It was a beautiful culmination of all of us coming together. And I was really glad that I had the opportunity to make a difference.
And if you could sit down with your younger self, I always think these questions are so interesting. So if you could sit down with your younger self, the version that was just starting out in this field, really inspired about what you could change and, your vision of what the future could be, what would you tell your younger self?
I would look her right in the eye and I would say, trust your instincts. Go with your gut. Don't underestimate yourself. Because if you lead with kindness, your empathy will be your greatest superpower. Just keep showing up every single day with grace, grit, and a little bit of sparkle, and it will change lives. You'll make a difference. And know when you go to bed at night that you did the best that you could do.
Oh my goodness, I got tingles. Actually got tingles. That was amazing. What wonderful advice. What wonderful, wonderful advice. Yeah, I would love to be your younger self so I could get that advice. That's so lovely. That is so lovely. And looking ahead, when people talk about your legacy, I mean, you've clearly made a big impact in South Florida communities. What do you hope they'll say about the work that you've done?
They'll say that I led with heart and compassion and that I just didn't manage properties. It was all about the people, and that I built systems that honored those people. And I hope that they say that I was that person that consistently turned conflict into connection, and that I truly left every single community that I touched and every single manager, board member better than I found them.
Wow. And I really received that with so much heart as well. Like, I really feel that, that's your mission. Marcy, thank you so much for sharing not just your expertise, but your stories, the struggles, the breakthroughs, the moments that shaped you. What I've taken away is that community isn't just about structure or systems. It's mostly about people, and as you say, the heart that you kind of deliver, to these people, and how we choose to show up for each other, I guess. So to everyone who's listening, if Marcy's perspective made you pause and think about your own community, your own workplace, or even your own family, don't let that drift. Do something with it. Marcy, it has been an absolute privilege having you on Human After All. Thank you very, very much. And if people want to get in touch with you, Marcy, which I'm sure they will do, what is the best way of making contact? Is that through LinkedIn?
Through LinkedIn is probably the best way, or actually in the process of updating my website, marcykravit.com.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor to speak with you.
Thank you for having me. It's been an honor to be here, Juliette. And thank you for all that you do.